our family, mom and dad usually went to Beaumont to do shopping and stuff.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, but not that they never went to Oshawa, but grocery shopping and that. But like Lois said, Courtice, I mean, I guess Nichols Motors and Oshawa Wood Products were really the only two kind of
Well, they were it.
places that hired people, and other than farmland.
Roy Nichols was the gave the one of the big industries that sort of centered on number 2 highway that identified where there was a brand.
Right.
Okay, and there was the church manse was there, and there was a bunch of small identifiable properties owned by significant people in that proximity, and so that gave the Courtice some identification, and because those family names are still there, are still part of what is evident today in either building, construction, or plazas that are there, and so it all started from pretty much a nucleus somewhere around Roy Nichols' garage.
Yeah. When you were born, the two of you, was Courtice still primarily farming?
Yeah, I would say
Totally.
yeah. Totally. Really.
It was. We were almost in a mushroom community because that's all there was. Courtice wasn't overly identifiable other than Nichols' garage. Ebenezer was often where I would say I came from because it was Ebenezer Church. So where do you live? Near Ebenezer Church, and for certain it was farming. And it goes back to where Pick and I grew up just one concession apart from each other, but we were around before 401, which it gives you some idea just how long that community remained a farming community, beginning to be influenced by the presence of General Motors as an employer. Other than that, it was farming. I don't know about Pick, but I mean, I've always thought I was going to be a farmer, or be a rancher, or be something, but it was tough to make a living. And so both of us started to look elsewhere, I think, in fairness to say, I don't think this is going to work for a career. As much as I like it, the farms were too small, and it was, the community was shrinking because there were more people moving in.
Yeah.
When we grew up, you knew everybody within 5 miles of where you lived, and you knew who they were, and because they lived on a farm property or some small dwelling. That was it. There was no influx of new people.
Right.
We had zero new people.
And if anyone new moved to the community, you'd know immediately, right?
Well, because we were in school at that point, you might have a new family arrive. One particular family arrived from Holland, and what were there, 5 boys all dressed in navy blue suits.
So do you feel like you grew up as a child thinking I'm going to farm, and then by the time you were an adult ready for a job, the farming was no longer, as a full-time job, was no longer really an option. Is that fair to say?
It is for me. I didn't think farming I could pull it off because at that point we were about an 80 some odd acre farm, and I could see the struggles my dad was having. It certainly was not going to be a farm you could expand on. And so we, I just moved on. But it was, I was reluctant to do that too. But then it wasn't easy to reestablish yourself as a farm kid. To go out and buy a farm didn't seem like that was in the cards. That wasn't something I thought I could do.
No.
Eh?
Hindsight says you could have.
Might have, but it didn't seem like that was the thing, so went to town to get a job. Went to Oshawa.
But when I was 6, we had a tractor, and they hooked the tractor to pull the hay fork up, put the tractor on the barn hill, and I used to back it up to pull the thing up and then drive it back up the
hay
hill.
fork.
Yeah, when I was 6.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure I was at the barn helping do things when I was 6 or 7.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time I was 10 or 12, I mean, you were going full tilt doing it.
Yeah.
If Dad was doing something like haying or something, you'd go do all the chores.
We had, Ray would be the same. At that point, the tractors were starting to come on board. And so, as growing up with my cousins and the 3 or 4 farms that were my dad's farm, and uncle farms, my 2 uncle farms, and my grandfather's farm. We all worked all those farms together in a season. So I ended up, when we were through school, ended up sitting on a tractor from the last day of school to the first day I went back. That was just what you did.
So you needed to go back to school for a vacation.
About,
Was there any wildlife on the farms, like other than
Now
what
or
you
then?
expect then?
oh,
A lot less than there is now.
the
As far as-
wildlife on our farms, both of our farms in particular, was unbelievable. Ducks, geese, rabbits, pheasants, partridge. It was a gold mine for hunting and outdoor recreation. It all started with those marshes. They were the areas, the flyways for the ducks and the geese, and and the fishing. My grandfather, they fished whitefish with seine nets off the shores of Darlington Park. That was a big thing. That was a food source. And they shot ducks before there was limits.
Right.
So they could go down and shoot about as many ducks as they could carry in a brand sack home.
And wolves.
The wolf. Yeah, I was gonna say, were there wolves and coyotes?
Not as many as today.
That's just,
There's a wolf story about the original Warden farm on Prestonville that Sid Warden told me. And so your great-grandfather, Edwin Warden, had to leave the farm for some reason, early springs, when snow on the ground still. I think he had to take seed somewhere to get it cleaned. So he was gone. And his wife, who was at home, had to go out and get wood from the wood pile and bring it in to keep the house warm. And only because the neighbors eventually realized they were not seeing any smoke coming out of her chimney, went to investigate. And a wolf had circled the house. A hungry wolf, or a pack, had circled the house. And so she wasn't able to go out to get the wood, and without neighbors' help, would have perished.
Right. I mean, isn't that just everything about that story in itself being the sign of the times? Because neighbors looking over and caring enough to check in and say there's no smoke coming, and that being really the crux of the community support that existed then, and the knowledge, and so and so's away, and so and checking in a way that doesn't exist.